Okay, I'm working to establish where exactly I'm going to place the box on the neck. Fretboard's still loose. I think this particular one, I cut a groove here that's going to be where the nut is placed. So this piece, ½ inch past that, will have to taper down at about the same angle as the headstock to clear the strings without issue. So I think I'm going to start that about where that flat line is right there. I'm going to put that up to there. I'm looking for enough hanging out of the back side of the box that I can get my string supports off of it, and trying to determine just exactly how long I'm going to cut the fretboard. Basically, we're doing a 25.5-inch scale here, so from the nut, 25.5 inches is giving me an approximation as to where that bridge is going to need to be set. I also want to take into consideration the artwork on the box. I don't want to cut away all the things that make that box attractive. Still looking to keep all 24 frets on it. So I actually think that right about there is a pretty good spot. I'll make some marks on the neck to figure out where that is and glue the fretboard onto the neck. Okay, so I've marked the front and the back of my box here on the side of the neck. I also, on the opposite side of the neck, have marked the end of where I want the fretboard to be. I need to make a relief cut on the top of the neck that's going to allow the top of the box to vibrate. It's pretty much going to go from the edge of the box to the edge of the box, and that has to be made before the fret is glued to it. I want to take a look at the inside of the box to determine my edges to be exact. I can leave this little bit of wood that comes up to the edge there so there's no hole on the outside shown. This box has got a little cover here that I think I'm just going to cut that off and hang on to it. I may wind up re-gluing it in the box to help, once I cut the sound holes in, to make it look like something besides a white box inside. Okay, I've established the exact lines on the outside of my box, and now I'm getting some pieces together. I'm going to stack some pieces here, at least on this section, that'll become the heel. And I really don't need it to extend all the way down, although when I cut this away it's going to weaken this just a little bit. I think we'll still have plenty of strength in this maple. I'm going to use the wedge that I cut out of the headstock and I'm going to cut the same angle down here at the end and install this wedge down at the end to give it the same colored wood on top as the fretboard. Okay, I've got this set up on my scarf joint jig, and in order to not go so deep, I've moved it back from the front edge here. I only really want to clip off the top of that. We'll see how that works out. I'm just checking it with the piece that I cut off, and actually that looks just about right. It's a little bit long, but I can trim that down later. Should work. I used a piece of blue painter's tape to help hold that from sliding down to the end when I clamped it up. Seemed to work pretty good. Alright, I've got that sandwich glued up. Waiting for it to dry. Okay, moving on to the next one. I'm laying out where the box is going to go. I've got This one cut a little different. I don't have a groove cut into the fretboard, so the nut on this one is actually going to cut slightly into the neck or the top of the headstock and set right against the fretboard, so I don't have to go as far down. This Osage orange, I didn't have quite as much wood to work with, so kind of wound up with it slightly different. I've set the box to about where I want it. I've got roughly 1.5 inches sticking out of the back side, which will allow me enough to tie my strings on at the back side of it. I have a narrower box to work with here, so same process. I'm going to mark about where that box goes on the neck, move the fretboard out of the way, and figure out what exactly I'm going to do with the inside of this box and how that's going to set. I'll have to be careful about how much depth I put on my heel wood. When I add this on, it's probably going to go right to the bottom of the box here and attach at the bottom of this. This box is lined with a couple of sheets of loose paper, which will give me a nice color when I cut through the top of the box for my sound holes, but it doesn't really give me anything to glue onto, so I may have to cut away on the inside where I'm going to glue some support blocks down. Okay, here's the neck. It's glued up. I've roughed in some blocks. Got most of my glue cleaned up. Most of this will be getting carved away, so that won't be too big a deal. I did the tail of this one just a little bit different. I wanted to leave the angle. I still put a piece of Osage orange on top of the walnut and glued that on. Cut it back at the scarf joint angle. Set that one aside and let her dry. Okay, I've got my neck. It's got the pieces glued on, dried. I've changed the end a little bit, put a little bit of an angle on that. I'd like a little drop off on those strings at the end, that way it pulls down over the bridge better. And I have a template here that I made from one of the last guitars that I've done that I really rather liked the shape of, so that's going to be my rough template to cut this back, and I'll rough that out on the bandsaw and get rid of a lot of that material, and then I'll form everything by hand. Okay everyone, I'm getting ready to carve a neck out. I've got one set up here, and I've put a center line down the middle of it, and I've got my carving tools of choice here on the counter, and I'm gonna get started. I've got it clamped down to the end of the table pretty securely. Let me turn the camera around and we'll get going. Going to start out by just taking off some corners here. What is something other than that? I'm using a number 60 Stanley . Got a template here that I'm going to use to rough in my shape. Try to bring it down a long way with this rasp. It's very coarse, has a finer side here. I'm going to switch over to that. Switched over to a medium rasp, working my way up to finer grits, being a little bit more careful, especially around the headstock. Graduated to a dowel with sandpaper wrapped around it. 150 grit. Still shaping a little bit here. Here's the neck at 150. Sure, you could make a square neck, but why would you want to? I'm going to shape the tailstock a little bit. I'm just going to round off the corners here. I've already kind of tapered it back a little bit. Use that wedge that I cut out of the other end of the neck